Alright guys, welcome back. In this video, we're gonna go over some basics of trigonometry for solving the engineering mechanics question. And so let's start with this right triangle that we have in here, and let's call this alpha. And let's see how we can find sine, cosine, and tangent of the angle alpha. So we need to remember SOHCAHTOA, which can be used for finding the sine from cosine from ca, and TOA from tangent. So if we look at this right triangle here, we have for angle alpha, we have this side in here, which will be the adjacent, and this side here will be the opposite, and we have in here hypotenuse. So let's start with sine of alpha and how we can find the sine of alpha. So for sine of alpha, we have SO, which means O stands for the opposite, and the H stands for hypotenuse on to the denominator of the fraction. So for cosine, we'll have A, which is the adjacent, and we have H, again, hypotenuse. And for the tangent, we have O, which stands for opposite, and A will be the adjacent. So these are the some basics that we need for solving the engineering mechanics questions. The other thing is we are talking about the right triangle, which the Pythagorean theorem applies. And if we want to apply that theorem here, we'll have the hypotenuse squared equals to adjacent squared plus opposite squared. So if any of these sides are missing based on the Pythagorean theorem, we can find. And I have two examples in here. By the way, you guys can find the full answer of each of these two questions in the channel. So basically in the left one, in the brake lever, we have to find the force couple system at point O, but I'm not going to get into that in this question. I just want to show how we can divide this force F in two components of X and Y. So if we consider our X, Y for both of these two examples in this direction, we know that this will be our Fy, and we have this one as our Fx. And let's see how we can find Fy and Fx. So from the question, we know this angle is 20 degrees. And what we need to do is to find our Fx and our Fy. Well, let's see how we can find Fx and Fy. So if we look at this right triangle that we have in here, and if we want to find the cosine of that angle 20, adjacent over hypotenuse, Fy would be our adjacent, and hypotenuse simply is our F. And similarly, if we find the sine of 20, this time we'll have the opposite, which is this side, which we know is Fx over F. Our Fx would be simply F times sine of 20, and our Fy would be F times cosine of 20 degrees. The one thing that we need to keep in mind is the direction for these two. So our Fy is positive since we are upward. But if we look at our Fx, we'll see that the Fx is negative, which means we need the negative sign in here. So that's the application of trigonometry in finding these angles and finding the x and y component of each force that we have. We'll have a similar thing in the other question. So if we look at the right figure, so again, in the original question, we needed to find the moment of that force, 250 Newton, about the center of the bolt, but we're trying to find the x and y component of that force. I'm gonna show this one in red. If we look at this, we will have these two forces for the 250 Newton force. This one would be our Fx and this would be our Fy. Again, we have the same coordinates for x and y. This will be our positive. And we know that this angle is 15 degrees. So again, we can do our sine and cosine to find these two. If we look at sine of 15, so I'm gonna again highlight the triangle that we have in here in orange. So this would be our right triangle, and if we want to find the sine of 15, opposite over the hypotenuse. So opposite of 15 degree would be this side, which is our fx. So we have fx over f, which is our hypotenuse. And for finding the cosine of 15 degrees, this number will have the adjacent, which is fy divided by the hypotenuse. And from here, we can find our fx and fy. So fx will be f times sine of 15 degrees, and our fy would be f times cosine of 15 degrees. So again, the next step is just check the direction of these two forces. If we look at the fy, we'll see that we are in the opposite direction of y-axis, which means we need a negative sign in here. And for fx, since we are to the left, this force would be also negative too. We need to be mindful about this angle because so we had this angle 15 degrees. This will be 90 minus 15. You can go either with each of these right triangles. The other way to do this question is going with this right triangle that I'm highlighting in blue, and this would be our right triangle. And if we go with that one, it will be a different story for fx and fy. This time it will be fx. So let's say we want to find the fx with the other angle. So if we want to find the fx, we can go with the cosine of that angle, which is 90 minus 15 degrees, which will be 75. So for cosine of that angle, again, we have adjacent, which is fx, divided by hypotenuse, which is f. And this time our fx will be f cosine of 75 degrees. And again, we'll have a negative sign. So it really depends on the angle that we are considering. There is no rule that fx is always cosine or sine. It really depends on the angle that we're considering. So that's it for this trigonometry basics that we need for a lot of questions actually for the statics. And see you guys next time.